The moment the heavy steel door slams shut and the locking mechanism engages, the world you understood ceases to exist. You are no longer a citizen with rights, a consumer with options, or a civilian with a safety net. You have crossed the threshold into a strictly mathematical universe, where the laws of physics and biology are the only judges that matter. The old world is over. Outside that door, chaos reigns, but inside, you face an even more insidious threat. The confident mistakes you packed into your pantry. You believe you have prepared. You see shelves stacked with cans, bags of grain, and comfort foods, and you calculate your survival in terms of months or years. This is a lethal miscalculation. You have not stocked a life support system. You have stocked a slow-acting suicide kit. The margin of error in a sealed environment is zero. To survive, you must strip away the emotional comfort of food and view it strictly as a chemical fuel input within a closed operational system. In a bunker, a basement, or a sealed room, you are managing a delicate biological equation. Every gram of matter you introduce into your body triggers a chain reaction of metabolic costs. Digestion requires water. Metabolism generates heat. Waste production demands disposal. If the inputs you have selected require more resources to process than they provide in sustainable energy, you are in a state of calorie bankruptcy. You are dying, mathematically, long before your heart stops beating. The food you hoarded to save you becomes the kill mechanism that accelerates your demise. Most people treat survival stockpiling like grocery shopping for a long blizzard. They buy what they like to eat, assuming that a full belly equals survival. This is a civilian delusion. In a high-stress, low-resource environment, your body's chemistry changes. Your cortisol spikes, altering your insulin response. Your activity levels drop to near zero to conserve oxygen and reduce heat signatures. Yet your brain demands high-octane glucose to process threat assessments. If you feed this stressed system the wrong fuel, you induce lethargy, dehydration, and cognitive decline. You become a liability to your group. You become a loot drop, a resource cache for the first predator who breaches your perimeter because you were too weak or too foggy to defend it. We must apply hard logic to your inventory. There is no room for sentimentality or comfort food if that comfort comes with a physiological tax you cannot pay. The strategy is simple but ruthless. We must identify the items that look like food but act like biological sabotage. We must analyze them not by their flavor profile, but by their resource cost. How much water they steal from your limited reserves, how much precious fuel they consume to become edible, and how much risk they introduce into your gut biome. Survival is a brutal mathematical calculation. If the numbers do not balance, you die. It is time to audit your supplies with the cold objectivity of a coroner. We will dismantle the 5 most common prepper myths, item by item, and replace them with operational principles that ensure you remain a predator in this new ecosystem, not prey. You stare at the rows of canned hearty stews and savory soups lining your shelves, and you see safety, stability, and a quick meal when the power grid fails. This is a fatal optical illusion. In the harsh light of post-collapse physics, those cans are not food. They are desiccants. You have stockpiled a chemical weapon that targets your most finite and critical resource, water. In the old world, a high-sodium meal was a triviality because the water required to process it was infinite and practically free. You simply turned a tap. But the old world is over. And in the sealed environment of a bunker, water is heavy, uncompressible, and finite. Every drop you store takes up precious cubic footage, and every drop you consume brings you closer to zero. By relying on processed, sodium-saturated canned goods, you are violating the fundamental laws of biological logistics. You must understand the physiology of the machine you occupy. Your body is a biological engine that requires a solvent to flush waste. When you ingest the massive sodium loads found in prepper favorites, often exceeding 1,500 milligrams per serving for preservation and flavor masking, you force your kidneys into a crisis state. To maintain homeostasis and prevent toxicity, your renal system demands a surge of water to dilute and excrete the excess salt. This is the multiplier rule in action, but it is working against you. 1 unit of bad food intake necessitates a multiple of water expenditure. You are not just eating calories, you are aggressively dehydrating your system to survive the digestion process. You are paying a liquidity tax you cannot afford. This creates a catastrophic feedback loop. You eat the stew to gain energy, but the salt content triggers a primal thirst response. You drink from your limited jerry cans to quench that thirst, depleting your reserves at 3 or 4 times the calculated base rate. You are drinking your survival timeline. If you restrict water intake to ration supplies while continuing to consume high sodium loads, you induce hypernatremia. Your blood thickens, your heart rate elevates, and your ability to thermoregulate fails. You are essentially preserving yourself like jerky from the inside out. In a bunker scenario where ventilation is poor and stress is high, this internal thermal runaway is a disaster. The ultimate price is paid in cognitive function. Dehydration is the silent killer of tactical efficiency. Long before you die of thirst, you will lose your mind. Your focus fractures, your patience evaporates, and your decision-making skills regress to that of a frightened child. In a scenario where one wrong turn of a valve or one missed security check means death, a dehydrated brain is a lethal liability. You become irritable and erratic, destabilizing the group dynamic and inviting conflict in a confined space. You have allowed a can of soup to degrade your biological hardware until you are no longer capable of operating the software of survival. Survival must be treated as a brutal mathematical calculation, and the math on sodium is undeniable. It consumes more life than it sustains. You survey your stockpile and see 50-pound bags of dry red kidney beans, congratulating yourself on securing a lifetime supply of cheap protein. This is confident incompetence. In the ruthless physics of a post-collapse environment, a dry bean is not food. It is a stone. To convert that stone into a bioavailable calorie, you must apply consistent high-intensity heat for hours. You have not stored food, you have stored a fuel parasite that will bleed your energy reserves dry. In a grid-down scenario, the gas lines are dead, the electric coils are cold, and your portable propane canisters are a finite treasure, more valuable than gold. Every minute you keep a pot boiling is a minute you are burning through your operational lifespan. You are trading a non-renewable, critical resource, fuel, for a cheap commodity. This is a thermodynamic error that leads directly to calorie bankruptcy. Consider the energy return on investment, EROI, of your pantry. If you must burn 3 hours of precious propane to render a pot of beans edible, you have lost the strategic advantage. That fuel was your ability to sterilize suspicious water, your ability to heat a freezing room, or your ability to cauterize a wound. You have sacrificed critical utility for a meal that offers zero tactical benefit over a pre-cooked alternative. Even worse, you are ignoring the biological kill mechanism inherent in the bean itself. Raw kidney beans contain phytohemagglutinin, a potent toxin. If you attempt to conserve your dwindling fuel supply by simmering them at a lower temperature or for a shorter duration, you do not cook the bean. You activate the poison. Consuming undercooked beans triggers violent vomiting and diarrhea, plunging you instantly back into the dehydration spiral. You tried to save fuel, and instead, you liquidated your body's water reserves. Beyond the thermodynamics, there is the tactical reality of signature management and the Greyman protocol. Boiling food for hours creates a distinct, penetrating olfactory signal. In a world where hunger is the baseline, the smell of cooking food is a beacon that screams loot drop to everyone within a half-mile radius. You are broadcasting your location and your resource status to the very predators you are hiding from. You must rely on hard logic. In a bunker, if you have to cook it to survive it, you have already compromised your security. You are sending up aroma trails because you failed to understand the physics of your pantry. Survival must be treated as a brutal mathematical calculation. The margin of error is zero. You have filled your Mylar bags with brown rice and whole wheat berries, believing you have secured a nutritional advantage over the processed carbohydrates of the masses. This is a scientific illiteracy that will kill you. In the unforgiving chemistry of long-term storage, these whole grains are not assets. They are decaying organic matter. You have ignored the rancidity clock ticking inside every kernel. Unlike white rice, which has been stripped of its unstable elements, whole grains retain the germ and the bran, components rich in natural oils. In a static environment, oxygen attacks these lipids with relentless efficiency, triggering oxidation. You have not stored food, you have stored a slow-burning chemical fire that turns nutrients into toxins. This threat is invisible until it is too late. Rancidity is the silent loot drop of the pantry. You may not smell the spoilage until the grain is cooking, or worse, you may not detect it at all under the heavy seasoning you use to mask the monotony of bunker life. When you consume rancid fats, you are ingesting free radicals and toxic compounds that wage war on your digestive tract. The immediate result is severe gastrointestinal distress, cramping, vomiting, and diarrhea. In the old world, this was a sick day. In a post-collapse bunker with finite water and zero sanitation infrastructure, dysentery is a death sentence. It creates a rapid exit ramp for your hydration, accelerating the calorie bankruptcy you are desperately trying to avoid. You must apply hard logic to your biological reality. There are no hospitals, there are no IV drips, there is no pharmacy to dispense anti-nausea medication. If you induce a gut infection through your own poor logistics, you are on your own. You have become a casualty of your own confident mistakes. The nutritional superiority of brown rice is irrelevant if the food itself becomes a biological weapon. Survival must be treated as a brutal mathematical calculation. White rice, stripped of its fats and essentially dead, is thermodynamically stable. It can sit for decades and still provide fuel. Whole grains are volatile. By choosing the healthy option, you have prioritized a civilian dietary preference over a tactical operational necessity. You have gambled your gut health on an unstable lipid, and in a world without safety nets, the house always wins. You look at the glass jars of home-canned green beans, carrots, and meats that line your shelves, glowing in the dim light like trophies of self-sufficiency. You see a connection to the earth and a rejection of industrial dependence. This is a romantic delusion that acts as a biological Russian roulette. In the unyielding court of microbiology, amateur preservation of low-acid foods is not a skill. It is a gambling addiction where the wager is your central nervous system. You have not stored nutrition, You have built an incubator for Clostridium botulinum, the most potent neurotoxin known to man. The old world allowed for grandma's recipes because emergency rooms were a phone call away. The old world is over, and in a bunker, there is no ventilator to breathe for you when your diaphragm paralyzes. The physics of this threat are absolute. Botulism spores are ubiquitous in soil and incredibly resilient. They can survive boiling water temperatures, 200 to 12 degrees Celsius, 100 degrees Celsius, with ease. When you seal low-acid food in a jar without reaching the critical thermal death point of 240 degrees Celsius, 121 degrees CC, a temperature only achievable under sustained calibrated pressure, you create the perfect anaerobic environment for these spores to wake up. They germinate, multiply, and excrete toxin into the food. This is the ultimate kill mechanism because it is invisible. The food does not look spoiled. It does not smell rotten. It does not taste wrong. You eat it believing you are nourishing your family, and within 12 to 36 hours the confident mistake takes effect. The physiological cascade is terrifyingly specific. It starts with blurred vision and difficulty swallowing, as the toxin blocks the release of acetylcholine, the chemical messenger that tells your muscles to contract. It moves downward, systematically shutting off your motor functions. This is not a stomachache. This is a total system shutdown. In a post-collapse scenario, you cannot treat this. You can only watch. You have introduced a threat that turns your own body into a prison. By relying on water bath canning or unverified pressure methods for low-acid foods, you have violated the zero margin of error principle. You are betting your life on a seal and a gauge that hasn't been calibrated in years. You must rely on hard logic and industrial redundancy. Commercial canning factories use retort cookers that monitor thermal penetration with computerized precision, ensuring every micron of that food reaches sterility. They have done the math for you. In a survival situation, trust the stamped metal can over the hand-sealed glass jar. The metal can is a proven operational unit. The glass jar is a variable. Do not let sentimentality regarding homegrown produce override the biological reality of anaerobic bacteria. If you cannot guarantee 240 degrees for the required duration with scientific certainty, you are not preserving food. You are bottling death. Survival must be treated as a brutal mathematical calculation, and the probability of error in home canning is a risk you cannot afford to carry. You gaze at the crates of chocolate bars, hard candies, and sugary drink mixes, convincing yourself that you have stored morale boosters for the dark days ahead. This is a psychological crutch that will break your legs. In the high-stakes arena of crowd psychology and endocrinology, sugar is not a reward. It is a destabilizing agent. You are introducing a volatile chemical variable into a human system already redlining on cortisol and adrenaline. The old world is over, and with it, the luxury of using food to medicate your emotions. In a bunker, stable behavior is the bedrock of security. By flooding your group with high glycemic inputs, you are engineering a sugar crash that will tear that foundation apart. When you consume refined sugar under extreme stress, your pancreas responds with a panic dump of insulin. This is biology, not willpower. The glucose spike provides a fleeting moment of artificial energy, followed immediately by a catastrophic plunge, reactive hypoglycemia. Your blood sugar bottoms out. In a tactical environment, this is disastrous. The physical symptoms, shaking, weakness, and sweating, mimic fear, compounding the stress response. But the psychological symptoms are the true kill mechanism. Irritability, paranoia, and aggression skyrocket. You have taken a group of frightened, confined people and chemically induced a mood disorder. You are creating morale debt. borrowing a brief moment of pleasure at the cost of hours of behavioral instability. Consider the multiplier rule applied to group dynamics. One person crashing from a sugar high becomes a friction point. Two become a conflict. A group becomes a mob in a box. In a sealed space where you cannot walk away to cool off, emotional volatility is a threat to the chain of command. You need operators who are stoic and steady, not addicts riding a glucose roller coaster. Hard logic dictates that you must maintain a flat emotional baseline. You cannot afford the oscillating peaks and valleys of a sugar addiction. Survival must be treated as a brutal mathematical calculation, and the math here is simple. Sugar subtracts from your control. It turns your team into liabilities. Eliminate the candy. Stock complex carbohydrates that burn slow and keep heads cool. You are surviving a collapse, not throwing a party. We have dismantled the myths. Now we must build the protocol. To survive the collapse, you must adopt the Greyman philosophy, not just in your movement, but in your metabolism. The old world of flavor, comfort, and dining is dead. In its place, you must install a nutritional doctrine based on invisibility, efficiency, and density. You are no longer eating. You are refueling a biological asset. The objective is to secure caloric intake without triggering a kill mechanism through resource depletion or signature broadcasting. Your food supply must remain as undetectable and low maintenance as you are. The core of the Greyman diet is zero prep. Every time you light a stove, you convert your shelter into a beacon. The smell of searing meat or boiling spices travels through ventilation shafts and cracks in the masonry, alerting starving predators that a loot drop is nearby. Operational security demands that you eliminate this signature. You must prioritize foods that are chemically stable and edible immediately upon opening. Peanut butter, pemmican, hardtack, and industrial retort-pouched meals are the gold standard. They require no water to rehydrate, saving your hydration reserves for your kidneys. They require no heat to process, saving your fuel for medical sterilization. They are silent, odorless, and tactically invisible. Next, you must prioritize calorie density to avoid calorie bankruptcy. Space in a bunker is finite. You cannot afford to store dead air or water weight. Lettuce, celery, and popcorn are civilian luxuries. They are operational failures. You need foods that deliver maximum energy payoff for minimum spatial cost. Fats are the superior fuel source here, offering 9 calories per gram compared to the 4 provided by carbohydrates or protein. Your stockpile should be weighted heavily towards shelf-stable lipids, coconut oil, ghee, and olive oil. These are force multipliers. They can turn a meager ration of bland starch into a life-sustaining meal without spiking your insulin or demanding excessive digestion water. Finally, you must detach psychologically from the act of eating. In the old world, food was a social ritual and an emotional soothe. In the post-collapse reality, it is a maintenance task, identical to cleaning a rifle or checking a perimeter fence. If you are eating for pleasure, you are vulnerable. If you are eating for boredom, you are consuming your timeline. You must discipline your hunger and the hunger of your group. Rationing is not just about stretching supplies. It is about enforcing the discipline required to override the crowd psychology of panic consumption. You eat by the clock and by the gram, not by the appetite. The analysis is complete. The confident mistakes of the prepper fantasy, the salty stews, the raw beans, the rancid grains, the home-canned poisons, and the sugar comforts have been identified and purged. What remains is a lean, hard logistical framework designed for one purpose: keeping the biological machine running in a hostile environment where the margin of error is zero. You now possess the hard logic required to audit your pantry. Do not wait for the door to close to realize you have packed a suicide kit. Survival is a brutal mathematical calculation. Make the numbers balance or prepare to be subtracted from the equation.